Lots more non-footballing matters to get your thoughts on between now and 1 o'clock as well, though. We're going to focus this hour on a row that's broken out today regarding the state pension, and specifically the age at which people will be entitled to start receiving it. Because you might well be aware, particularly if this is going to affect you, I'm sure you will be aware, that the state pension age is due to rise gradually to 68 between April 2044 and April 2046. Now, that will affect people who were born between April 1977 and April 1978. It will mean that they have to wait another year before they can access the state pension. They will have to work until they are 68 before they can do that. However, reports today that the Treasury is planning to bring that cut-off forward by at least 7 years to 2037. Now, what that would mean is that about 5 million people currently aged between 49 and 55 would have to work a whole nother year before being eligible for the state pension, meaning they would miss out on the equivalent of about £12,500 in today's money. And this is part, of course, of the government drive to keep pushing back and back the age at which people can access the state pension. It's already gone up in recent years, 65, 66, 67. It's now going up to 68. Is that fair, do you think? Is it right for people to be having to wait longer and longer and work more and more in order to access the state pension? Or when you've already been working for 40, 50 years, does it just take the biscuit that the government is now saying, oh, actually, sorry, you've got to do another year. Actually, and then there might be another year after that. What do you think? 0345 6060 973. Is this a betrayal of trust on the part of people who have worked for most of their lifetime, expecting to get the state pension at a certain age, only to now find out they're going to have to work another year or two in order to access that money? What do you think? Fair? Unfair? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. I mean, the argument is, you've probably heard it, that because people are living older, living longer and longer until they're older and older, that it's absolutely right that the age at which they access the state pension rises in line with that. The difficulty the government's now got in making that argument is that for the first time in decades, life expectancy has now stalled. So people in this country aren't actually getting older and older, and yet they are still going to have to make that argument to defend this change. So what do you think? Pushing back the pension age is something that's just inevitable as people, at least up until now, live longer and longer, or does it just not sit easily with you? Does it just feel unjust and unfair, perhaps? 0345 6060 973. Pick up your phone, give me a call, let me know where you are on this right now. While you get your calls coming in, let's hear from Baroness Ros Altman, Conservative peer, former pensions minister and a former government business champion for older workers as well. Baroness, thank you for coming on the programme. Good to have you back with us here on LBC. Is it fair for the government to keep pushing back the pension age, and in this case, to be bringing forward the date at which they plan to do so? A very good evening to you.
And good evening to you. It is absolutely not fair. I mean, what this does is it disadvantages the oldest and poorest and most vulnerable pensioners because at the moment, the state pension age has been rising for quite some time, especially for women. But there is a 20-year differential in healthy life expectancy across the country. And those who are least well off tend to only stay healthy till their early 50s, whereas those who are best off are fit and fine until their early 70s. So for them, it's not a problem to wait. But for those who really are not well enough to work, or some of them may be caring for loved ones and can't work, or are suffering from ageism in the workforce and can't find a job, if they don't have a private pension, and they're less likely to than others to have a private pension, they have nothing to live on. So the more you put the state pension age up without making any allowances for the differences in health status and also, in fact, in the length of national insurance records, the more you are penalising the most vulnerable and making the better off even more well off, because they don't have a problem to wait longer and they are likely to live longer. So they'll get a lot more out of
So it's a sort of treble whammy. They live longer, they're healthier, but also they don't rely on the state pension in the same way, because they've got these sort of often, pretty rosy private pensions, Baroness, and so they can afford to retire earlier anyway. So there's a massive kind of inequality element to this. What would your solution be?
Well, there are ways in which we can actually save money if you want to cut the cost of state pensions, which would include, instead of 35 years for a full state pension, having to perhaps to have 45 or even 50 years of national insurance. 35 years is nowhere near a full working life. And if you started work at 16, by age 51, you've got the full state pension. But if you keep working, as you might well have to do for the next 15 years, you get nothing in return. And if at the same time you're not terribly well and you can't work, you may not even live long enough to get any state pension. In fact, you may get almost nothing, if not nothing. So what we need is more flexibility. And what I would argue is that if you increase the number of years that people need for a full state pension, you will cut the costs of pension provision. And if you allow early access, perhaps, a couple of years early, for those who have got the longest national insurance records and are in poor health, you will at least stop this further disadvantaging of the most vulnerable. In addition, you could save money by, for example, dropping the 2.5% element of the triple lock. 2.5% has no economic or social rationale. It doesn't make a lot of sense. You could even have, let's say, the average each year of prices and earnings increases as the way you protect state pension. You can't abandon protecting the state pension, but I would argue that the triple lock is not the best way to protect
so
it.
you would replace it with a sort of double lock instead, Baroness, would you? Yeah. Which a lot of, I mean, I'm sure you'll be aware of this too, but a lot of politicians I speak to in private say the triple lock has got to go. It's unfair and unsustainable. But they feel they can't say that in public because the backlash is just so extreme.
I don't know why, because there seems to be this misunderstanding. The triple lock isn't brilliant protection for all pensioners. It gives the best protection to the youngest, and it doesn't protect the poorest because pension credit isn't triple locked. And it also offers much less protection to the older state pensions, the over 75s, who only have the basic state pension triple locked, whereas the younger ones have the new state pension fully protected, which is about £60 a week more. So it's a totemic political symbol. Most people don't realise that it doesn't work properly. But if politicians were brave enough to try to explain that actually the triple lock, when it was introduced, was fine, but once we got the new state pension, it doesn't work properly, and we need to protect the state pension, but not in this particular way, that all politicians are committed to protecting the state pension, but the triple lock isn't the right way to do it.
Why do you think so few, and credit to you, Baroness, for saying that so clearly, but why do you think so many of your colleagues in Parliament aren't willing to make that argument, even if it's something that they readily admit in private?
It's very hard to fathom why people are so afraid to tell the public the honest truth that they want to protect state pensions, but the triple lock itself has become some kind of shorthand totem that says, oh, we will protect pensioners brilliantly.
Yes.
But the triple lock isn't the Rolls-Royce protection it's cracked up to be. And because the state pension is so complicated, maybe that's part of it. And politicians don't like to or want to or know how to get to the nitty-gritty of it. But the reality is, if you asked people who needs the best protection for their state pension, is it the youngest or is it the oldest and poorest? They would certainly not say it's the youngest, but that's what the triple lock does.
Yep. And it has been, I think you're right, it has become a symbol. It's not the detail that people disagree with. It's kind of this idea that somehow by even challenging the triple lock and its sustainability, you are, you're sort of trying to actively harm pensioners, which I find very curious indeed.
Wouldn't be the case. You can offer better protection for all of them, and certainly for the older ones, if you do this in a different way.
Especially if that then meant that you didn't have to keep raising the age at which people can access the pension. I think actually people would probably accept that trade-off.
Well, I hope so.
Well, we'll see what my listeners think of it, Baroness. Just finally, where are you on the question of means testing and whether there should be more means testing in the state pension system so that pensioners who are multimillionaires or very, very comfortable get less than they currently do, or at least don't see their pension continue to increase, while some of the people that you're rightly talking about who really do need more, get more?
The only area in which I would increase means testing would be if you want to keep raising state pension age, to introduce a lower age for the means-tested pension credit, so that the poorest ones who are in their mid-60s can't work, haven't got another pension, but do need to have a reasonable income and maybe even wouldn't live till this later state pension age, could claim pension credit early. But if you extend means testing for everyone across the whole age spectrum, then what you do is you discourage private savings and private pension provision. Because if people at the margin, middle earners or lower earners, who start to realise that if they actually deprive themselves of spending today and put money into a pension that they can't touch till later life, they will end up with less money than their colleague who has not bothered to put money into a pension, has spent it all as they went along, and then claims means testing in later life. We went through this in the noughties, where we extended means testing by introducing the pension credit originally, and it meant that private pension provision fell off a cliff. People didn't want to bother to save because, as I say, at the margin, they felt, well, I'm a mug to do that because then I'll just lose out later. So the better off are fine either way. But what we need and what we have always had and what makes sense to me is a minimum level of state pension provision, which is just about enough to manage on, but is not a king's ransom and is not going to give you a brilliantly wonderful lifestyle. So you can manage on it, but you would want to have more than that in terms of other savings or pensions. And you would know that it's worthwhile doing that, because if you want just the minimum lifestyle, that's all you're going to get. But if you do have some savings, you will have a better lifestyle.
Understood. Thank you very much, Steve, for coming on. Baroness Ros Altman, Conservative peer, former pensions minister and a former government business champion for older workers as well.